The morning sun cast long shadows across the cemetery as mourners gathered around the freshly dug grave. But behind the tears and black dresses, something far more sinister was brewing. Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted most? Someone who shared your blood, your memories, your childhood secrets? Welcome back. Tell me from which city you are watching me and what time it is there. Now, listen to this story. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, her 6-year-old son Leo clinging to her black dress. The humid southern air pressed against her skin like a warning. She didn't know it yet, but this funeral would change everything. Her grandmother's casket gleamed under the Georgia sun, and with it lay buried the last person who had ever truly protected her. Across the gathering, Claire watched with calculating eyes. Same blood, same family, but a heart made of ice. The lawyer's voice cut through the humid air like a blade. The will reading was about to begin, and Mia had no idea she was walking into a trap that had been set for months. Mia remembered being 8 years old, running barefoot through her grandmother's garden while Claire pulled wings off butterflies. Even then, the signs were there, but children don't see evil in family faces. They see what they want to see: love, protection, safety. How wrong she was. The inherited property sat like a crown jewel in the heart of their small southern town. 3 acres of pecan trees and a Victorian house that had sheltered 5 generations of their family. The lawyer's words still echoed in Mia's ears as she drove home that evening, Leo sleeping peacefully in the back seat. To my granddaughter Mia, I leave the family homestead and the sum of $80,000. Trusting she will preserve our family's legacy with the same love and dedication she has shown as a mother. Every word had been a dagger in Claire's perfectly manicured chest. That night, while Mia tucked Leo into bed, Claire sat in her luxury apartment plotting revenge. She had always been the favorite, the one with the college degree, the one with the successful career in real estate, the one who wore designer clothes to family barbecues and never had dirt under her fingernails. But grandmother had chosen the single mother, the woman who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, the woman who drove a car held together with prayer and duct tape. Claire's reflection stared back from her bathroom mirror, and what she saw made her stomach turn. A 35-year-old woman who had everything she thought she wanted, but nothing she actually needed. No husband, no children. No unconditional love like the kind Leo gave his mother every single day. That reflection whispered dark thoughts. If Mia couldn't handle the responsibility, if she proved herself unfit, then surely the family would see that Claire deserved the inheritance instead. Mia's alarm clock screamed at 5 in the morning. First job started at 6. Coffee shop on Main Street where she served lattes to people who made more money in a week than she made in a month. But she smiled, always smiled. Because Leo was watching, and children learn more from what they see than what they're told. "Mama, why do you have to work so much?" Leo asked over cereal that Tuesday morning. The question pierced her heart like it did every single time. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that his father chose drugs over family, that his mother left everything behind to keep him safe, that some sacrifices are too heavy for small shoulders to carry? Because we're building something beautiful, baby. Just you wait and see. But Mia didn't know that Claire was already building something too. A web of lies designed to catch her like a spider catches a fly. The first attack came disguised as concern. Claire showed up at the family's monthly gathering with worry lines etched across her forehead like she'd practiced them in the mirror. "I'm just concerned about Mia," she whispered to Aunt Martha over sweet tea and pound cake. "She looked so tired at the funeral, and Leo seemed, I don't know, different." Aunt Martha's eyebrows rose like question marks. "Different how?" "Oh, I don't want to say anything. Family should stick together. But Claire let the sentence hang in the humid air like smoke. Did you notice his clothes? And he seemed so quiet. Not like the bubbly little boy we remember. Seeds of doubt, planted with surgical precision. While Claire whispered poison at family gatherings, Mia spent her evenings covered in paint and sawdust. The old house needed work. Lots of work. But every board she replaced, every wall she painted, felt like a promise to the generations that came before and the future she was building for Leo. The property renovation became her evening sanctuary. After 8 hours serving coffee and 4 hours cleaning office buildings, she would drive to the old homestead and work until her muscles screamed for mercy. Leo would play in the yard, chasing fireflies while his mother hammered away at their future. But that future was about to become a battlefield. "Mrs. Henderson, I need to speak with you about your daughter." Claire's voice carried false concern as she called Mia's second job supervisor. "I'm her cousin, and I'm worried about her reliability lately." The lie rolled off her tongue like honey, sweet and smooth and toxic. "She's been missing family obligations, important ones, and little Leo. Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but the family is starting to talk. Do you see how poison spreads? One conversation at a time, one whispered concern at a time, until the whole community is infected with doubt. Mia's work schedule began shifting without explanation. Meetings moved without notice. Opportunities disappeared like morning dew. She attributed it to bad luck, not knowing that luck often has a name and a face and a plan. The breaking point came on a thunderous Thursday evening in March. Mia arrived at the property to find her front door standing open like a mouth screaming silence into the storm. Her hands shook as she called Leo's name. Nothing. The silence pressed against her eardrums until she thought they might burst. Every mother's worst nightmare crystallized in that moment like ice forming on her heart. Leo emerged from behind the old oak tree, tears streaming down his dirt-stained cheeks. "Mama, someone was in our house. They scared me, so I hid." That night, after Leo fell asleep clutching his stuffed dinosaur, Mia made a decision that would save both their lives. She drove to the electronics store and spent money she couldn't afford on a security system. Hidden cameras that would watch over them when she couldn't. She positioned the main camera carefully, angling it to capture the front entrance and most of the living room. If someone was targeting her family, she would catch them. She had no idea she was setting a trap for a predator who shared her blood. Claire's visits to the property began innocently enough. "Just checking on you, cousin. Making sure you and Leo are settling in okay." But innocent visits don't happen at 2 in the morning when the target is at work. The camera's red light blinked steadily in the darkness as Claire's silhouette moved through Mia's home like a ghost made of malice. She touched Leo's toys with gloved hands, moved furniture just slightly, opened drawers and left them ajar. Psychological warfare designed to make Mia question her own sanity. But Claire made one crucial mistake. She underestimated a mother's protective instincts. Mia noticed everything: the moved picture frames, Leo's action figures in different positions, the lingering scent of perfume that didn't belong to anyone in their family. "Leo, has anyone been in the house while Mama was at work? The lady with the shiny hair came by. She said she was checking on us." But Mama, she felt cold, like when we had to put Grandma in the ground. Children see truth that adults miss. They feel energy that grown-ups have learned to ignore. Leo's innocent observation would prove more valuable than any evidence a court could provide. Spring bloomed across Georgia like hope spreading through a broken heart. But for Mia, each beautiful day felt like borrowed time. The walls were closing in, and she didn't even know who was building them. Claire's campaign intensified. Phone calls to family members, casual conversations at the grocery store. Comments dropped at church like stones into still water, creating ripples of doubt that spread through their tight-knit community. "I'm just worried about little Leo." Single mothers have such a hard time, don't they? And Mia's been under so much stress since grandmother passed. Sometimes people make choices they wouldn't normally make when they're overwhelmed. The beauty of Claire's strategy was its subtlety. Never a direct accusation. Always concern. Always family loyalty. Always plausible deniability. Meanwhile, Mia worked herself into exhaustion, trying to prove she was worthy of the trust her grandmother had placed in her. The coffee shop manager began commenting on her tiredness. The cleaning company supervisor noted her distraction. "You doing okay, Mia? You seem different lately." How could she explain that she felt like prey being stalked by an invisible hunter? That her own family was turning cold shoulders at gatherings? That her 6-year-old son was asking why people looked at them funny at church? The first official complaint came on a Tuesday that started like any other. Mia was elbow-deep in renovating the kitchen when her phone rang. The number made her blood freeze. Georgia Division of Family and Children Services. "Ms. Martinez, this is Susan Chen with DFCS. We've received some concerns about your son's welfare, and I need to schedule a home visit." The phone slipped from Mia's paint-covered fingers like it was made of ice. The sound it made hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the empty house like a gunshot. Someone had reported her to Child Protective Services. But who would do such a thing? And why? The answer was reviewing her manicure in a downtown coffee shop, smiling at her reflection in her phone screen. Claire had made the call from a burner phone, using details only a family member would know. "I'm concerned about my cousin's parenting," she had told the intake worker. "The child seems neglected. Dirty clothes, behavioral changes, and she's been acting erratic since inheriting some money. I think the stress might be affecting her judgment." Every word carefully chosen. Every detail designed to build a case that would tear Leo from his mother's arms. Susan Chen arrived at the property on a humid afternoon when the air hung thick as cotton. Mia's hands shook as she opened the door, but Leo bounded toward the stranger with his usual sunny disposition. "Are you here to see our house? Mama's making it beautiful again." Susan's trained eyes swept the property, noting the fresh paint, the organized toy corner, the healthy snacks laid out for Leo's afternoon hunger. This didn't look like a neglectful home. This looked like love in the form of hard work and sacrifice. But she had a job to do. "Leo, can you show me your room, sweetheart?" As they walked through the house, Susan noticed something that Claire hadn't counted on. Leo chattered constantly, pointing out improvements his mother had made, expressing excitement about their new garden, showing off the reading corner Mia had created just for him. This wasn't the behavior of a neglected child. This was pure joy wrapped in a 6-year-old package. "And at night, Mama reads me stories about dragons and knights, and she makes the voices really funny. And she always checks for monsters under the bed, even though I'm too big to be scared anymore." Susan made notes, but not the kind Claire had hoped for. After Leo went to bed that evening, exhausted from showing off his home to their visitor, Mia sat on her grandmother's old porch swing and let the tears fall like rain after a long drought. The investigation would continue for weeks. Pop-in visits, interviews at Leo's school, background checks that would dig into every corner of her life. But Mia didn't know that someone else was watching too. The hidden camera had captured every one of Claire's midnight visits, every drawer opened without permission, every boundary crossed, evidence that would change everything. The next family gathering felt like walking into a courtroom where she was the defendant and everyone else was the jury. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Smiles looked painted on. Even her favorite uncle couldn't meet her eyes. Claire played her role perfectly, concerned cousin, family peacekeeper, the voice of reason in a difficult situation. "We all love Mia," she announced to the assembled relatives. "That's why we have to support whatever's best for Leo. Children need stability. They need—" She paused dramatically. "They need to know the adults in their lives are making good decisions." The subtext hung in the air like smoke from a toxic fire. If Mia couldn't handle the pressure, if the authorities found her lacking, then perhaps Leo would be better off elsewhere. Perhaps with family who could provide better. Perhaps with someone who had never struggled to pay rent or worked 2 jobs just to survive. Perhaps with Claire. But that night, as Mia tucked Leo into bed, he whispered something that changed the trajectory of their entire story. "Mama, why does the lady with shiny hair come here when you're not home?" Time stopped. The earth held its breath. "What lady, baby?" "The cold lady. She comes in and touches our things, but she tells me it's our secret. I don't like secrets that make my tummy hurt." Every mother knows that moment when her child's safety becomes the only thing that matters in the entire universe. When protective instincts override every other consideration. When the mama bear awakens and discovers she has claws. Mia's hands moved with surgical precision toward her laptop. The security footage files glowed on the screen like smoking guns loaded with truth. There was Claire, entering without permission while Mia worked her second job. Moving through their home like she owned it. Touching Leo's belongings. Opening cabinets. Creating the disarray that had made Mia question her own memory. And there was the evidence of something even worse. Claire speaking to Leo off camera. The timestamp showed she had been there for over an hour on multiple occasions, a grown woman alone with a 6-year-old child while his mother worked to support them both. Do you know what it feels like to discover that someone you trusted has been stalking your family? To realize that blood relationship doesn't guarantee protection, only access? Mia's hands trembled as she copied the files to a secure drive. Evidence that could destroy Claire's carefully constructed narrative. Proof that would reveal who was really putting Leo at risk. But using it would mean admitting she had recorded family members without consent. It would mean betraying the Southern code of keeping family business within family walls. It would mean choosing her son's safety over family loyalty. For any real mother, that's not a choice at all. The next morning brought Carlos into their story like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. He taught 4th grade at Leo's elementary school and had noticed changes in the boy's behavior. Subtle things. The way Leo looked over his shoulder. How he asked permission for everything twice. The anxiety that clung to him like morning mist. "Mrs. Martinez, could we talk after school today? Just for a few minutes?" Carlos Rivera had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the gentle manner of someone who had dedicated his life to protecting children. His own childhood had been marked by chaos and uncertainty, driving him toward a career where he could provide stability for other people's babies. "Leo's a bright kid," he said as they sat in his empty classroom surrounded by colorful posters about kindness and courage. "But he's been asking questions about what happens when parents can't take care of their children anymore, about whether teachers are required to report things they notice." Mia's heart cracked like old paint under pressure. "He asked you that?" "Yesterday, right after someone came to interview his teacher about his home environment." The pieces clicked together like bullets sliding into chambers. Claire hadn't just reported Mia to child services. She had been building a case, interview by interview, conversation by conversation. That evening, Carlos offered something Mia had almost forgotten existed in her world. Support without strings attached, help without judgment, friendship without ulterior motives. They sat on her front porch while Leo played in the yard, catching fireflies in mason jars like he was trapping fallen stars. "There's something you should know," Mia said quietly, and she told him everything. About Claire's visits, about the security cameras, about the evidence that could save her son but destroy her family. Carlos listened without interrupting, the way teachers learn to do when children finally trust them enough to share their secrets. "You have to use the footage," he said finally. "Leo's safety comes first, always, whatever the cost." But the cost was becoming clearer every day. Family members who had once competed to babysit Leo now found excuses to avoid being alone with him. Church friends asked fewer questions about work and offered fewer helping hands. The net was tightening, and everyone could feel it, including Leo. "Mama," he said one night as thunder rolled across the Georgia sky like bowling balls in heaven's attic, "are we in trouble?" The question broke something inside Mia that had been cracking for months. She pulled her son close and breathed in his scent of bubble bath and innocence and pure trust that she would always protect him. "No, baby, we're not in trouble. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups have to help fix them." "Is the cold lady making mistakes?" From the mouths of babes comes wisdom that adults spend decades learning to ignore. "Yes, baby, I think she is." That weekend brought the revelation that shattered Claire's facade like a hammer through stained glass. Her ex-boyfriend, Marcus, appeared at Mia's door, shifting nervously from foot to foot like a man carrying boulders of guilt. "I need to tell you something about Claire," he said, glancing around as if she might materialize from the shadows. "Something you should know before this goes any further." They sat at Mia's kitchen table while Leo napped, and Marcus unraveled the truth like pulling thread from a sweater until the whole thing comes apart in your hands. "She owes people money, a lot of money, gambling debts from some high-stakes poker games downtown. She's been scrambling for months, trying to find a way to pay them back. The inheritance. Always, it came back to the inheritance." "She talked about you constantly," Marcus continued. "How it wasn't fair that someone who struggled financially would be trusted with that much money. How the family would be better served if someone more responsible handled the estate." Responsible. The word tasted bitter as medicine that doesn't work. "She said if something happened to prove you were unfit as a mother, the family would naturally turn to her. She's the successful one, the educated one. The one without messy complications like single parenthood." Every revelation peeled back another layer of Claire's carefully constructed persona. Beneath the designer clothes and polite smiles lived desperation, wearing a mask of superiority. That night, Mia made copies of the security footage and locked them in a safety deposit box. Evidence that could save her son would be protected like the precious thing it was, but she hoped she would never have to use it. Hope is a dangerous thing when you're dealing with someone who has already decided your destruction is worth their salvation. The formal hearing arrived like a storm you see coming, but can't avoid. Susan Chen sat across from Mia in a sterile conference room while lawyers shuffled papers and Leo played with blocks in a corner, unaware that his entire future was being decided by strangers. "We've completed our investigation," Susan said, her voice carefully neutral. "There are some concerns that have been brought to our attention." Mia's hands gripped her chair until her knuckles went white. This was it. The moment that would determine whether she kept her son or lost him to a system that didn't know how to love him the way she did. "However," Susan continued, and Mia's heart started beating again, "our observations don't support the allegations that were made. Leo appears to be a healthy, happy, well-cared-for child in a stable home environment." The relief hit like a wave, but Susan wasn't finished. "That said, we have some questions about the person who made the initial report, some inconsistencies in their statements that concern us. If this story is moving you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your support allows us to keep sharing stories like this." Claire's world began crumbling like a house built on sand when the tide comes in. Family members who had been swayed by her whispered concerns started asking harder questions. Why was she so interested in the details of Mia's parenting? Why did she know so much about Leo's daily routines? Why had she been asking about the inheritance timeline? Aunt Martha, the family matriarch who had initially been sympathetic to Claire's concerns, paid an unexpected visit to the property on a sunny Saturday morning. "I've been thinking," she said as she watched Leo chase a butterfly through the pecan grove, That boy is happy as a clam in butter. Been coming to our family gatherings his whole life, and he's never looked better than he does now." She paused, watching Mia paint the front porch railings with steady, determined strokes. "Makes me wonder why someone would think otherwise. Makes me wonder what they'd gain from thinking otherwise." The truth was spreading like sunrise across their small community. People were starting to ask the right questions and notice the wrong answers. But Claire wasn't finished. When subtle manipulation failed, she escalated to desperate measures. The for sale sign appeared in Mia's yard while she was at work. A realtor Claire had bribed with promises of easy commission on a forced sale. "I'm representing the family's interests," Claire told the realtor with her practiced smile. "My cousin is overwhelmed and needs help making difficult decisions. The property sale will give her the liquid cash she needs to provide better for her son." But the realtor underestimated small-town networks. Within hours, news of the unauthorized listing reached Aunt Martha, who drove over with fire in her eyes and the family's patriarch Uncle Joe in tow. They found Claire directing a staging team to rearrange Mia's furniture for better buyer appeal. "What in the Sam Hill do you think you're doing?" Uncle Joe's voice could stop traffic and did that day. Cars slowed on the main road to watch the drama unfold on the Martinez property. Claire's composure cracked like old plaster. "I'm helping the family make smart financial decisions. Mia's clearly in over her head, and Leo deserves better than this uncertainty." "Leo deserves his mama," Aunt Martha said with steel in her voice. "And his mama deserves family that supports her instead of sabotaging her." The confrontation escalated until neighbors emerged from houses to witness Claire's mask finally slip completely off. The concerned cousin disappeared, replaced by someone desperate and vicious and willing to destroy a child's world to get what she wanted. "She doesn't deserve any of this," Claire's voice carried across the property like wind through broken glass. "I'm the one with the education. I'm the one with the successful career. I'm the one who doesn't have illegitimate children dragging down the family reputation." The words hung in the humid air like smoke from a toxic fire. Leo heard them from inside the house, where he was supposed to be safe from grown-up arguments. The little boy who loved dragons and fireflies and his mama's bedtime voices heard someone call him illegitimate. Heard someone suggest his existence was a burden. That night, he couldn't sleep. "Mama, what does legitimate mean?" Some questions break your heart before you can even begin to answer them. Mia held her son close and whispered truths into his hair. "It means real, valid, important. And baby, you are the most legitimate thing in my entire world." But the damage was done. Claire's desperation had revealed her true feelings, and the family was finally seeing what Mia had felt for months. The predator among them wasn't the struggling single mother. It was the woman who smiled while planning destruction. The final confrontation came at the next family gathering, held at Uncle Joe's sprawling farmhouse, where 5 generations of their bloodline had celebrated joys and weathered sorrows together. Claire arrived fashionably late, as always, probably expecting the usual polite reception despite the property incident. Instead, she walked into a room full of relatives who had been comparing notes and connecting dots. "We need to talk," Uncle Joe said without preamble. "About Mia, about Leo, about some concerns that have come to our attention." Claire straightened her shoulders and prepared to launch into her practiced speech about family responsibility and difficult decisions. But Uncle Joe held up a weathered hand that had worked this land for 70 years. "Concerns about your behavior, Claire. About what you've been doing while pretending to help." The security footage played on Uncle Joe's big-screen television like a movie nobody wanted to watch but couldn't turn away from. Claire entering Mia's home without permission, moving through rooms like she owned them, staying far longer than any casual check-in would require. And there, captured in pixels and timestamps, was Leo. A 6-year-old child alone with a woman who was supposed to protect him, not use him as a pawn in her destructive game. The room went silent as a cemetery at midnight. Claire's face cycled through expressions like a broken slot machine. Surprise, anger, fear, calculation, and finally, desperate defiance. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising like steam under pressure. "I was protecting Leo. Mia's unstable. She works too much. She can't provide the kind of life he deserves." "And you can?" Aunt Martha's question cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "I have money. I have stability. I don't have to work 2 jobs just to keep the lights on." "But do you have love?" The question came from Leo himself, who had been playing quietly in the corner until the shouting started. His innocent voice carried more weight than all the legal documents in the world. "Do you love me the way Mama does? Because Mama works so hard, because she loves me. And she reads me stories because she loves me. And she checks for monsters because she loves me. You just feel cold when you touch me." From the mouths of babes comes truth that cuts deeper than any lawyer's argument. Claire looked around the room at faces that had once welcomed her to every holiday, every celebration, every family milestone. Now they reflected disappointment and disgust, and the kind of withdrawal that happens when trust dies. "Fine," she said, gathering her purse with shaking hands. "Keep your precious property. Keep your perfect little family. But don't come crying to me when reality hits and you realize money doesn't last forever." She walked out of Uncle Joe's house and, effectively, out of their family forever. But her departing words proved prophetic in ways she couldn't have imagined. The legal fees for fighting her accusations had drained Mia's savings. The stress had affected her work performance, putting both jobs at risk. The property renovations had stalled while she dealt with investigations and hearings. Victory felt hollow when you were winning battles but losing the war against poverty. That's when the family stepped up in ways that restored Mia's faith in blood bonds. Uncle Joe organized work crews to finish the house renovations. Aunt Martha started a meal train that kept Mia and Leo fed while she rebuilt her financial stability. Cousins who had been distant during Claire's poison campaign suddenly remembered who they really were. The property began blooming like a garden after rain. Fresh paint gleamed white as hope. The wraparound porch welcomed visitors with rocking chairs and hanging ferns. Leo's play area spread across the backyard like joy made tangible. Carlos became a regular fixture during weekend work sessions, teaching Leo to use child-sized tools while helping Mia repair damage Claire's chaos had created. His presence filled spaces in their lives they hadn't even realized were empty. "You know," he said one evening as they watched Leo chase lightning bugs across the lawn, "some families are born, others are chosen. Both kinds can be beautiful." 3 months after Claire's dramatic exit, Mia received a letter forwarded through 3 addresses before reaching her. The handwriting was familiar, though shakier than she remembered. "Dear Mia," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you after everything I've done." Claire's letter rambled across 3 pages of expensive stationery, detailing gambling debts that had consumed her savings, career pressures that had twisted her priorities, and jealousy that had grown like cancer in her heart. "I convinced myself I was protecting Leo from the struggles I watched you face. But I was really protecting myself from admitting that you succeeded where I failed. You built a loving home from nothing. I couldn't even maintain relationships with everything handed to me." The apology felt genuine, but it came too late to repair what had been broken. "I've entered a treatment program for gambling addiction. I've sold my condo to pay my debts. I'm starting over at 35 with nothing but the education I always thought made me better than everyone else." Mia read the letter twice, then filed it away in the box where she kept important papers. Forgiveness was possible, but forgetting was dangerous when a child's safety was involved. Leo never asked about the cold lady with shiny hair. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel safe, and the security of his mother's love helped him process traumatic events like stones worn smooth by patient water. The inheritance that had caused so much destruction became the foundation for something beautiful. Mia converted part of the property into a community garden where families could grow vegetables together. The old barn became a workshop where she taught furniture restoration to other single mothers looking for additional income. Carlos proposed on Leo's 7th birthday, kneeling in the pecan grove where 3 generations of the family had played as children. Leo helped him present the ring, having been consulted about the timing and his feelings about gaining a stepfather. "I love you both," Carlos said simply. "I want to build a life together, but only if Leo thinks that's a good idea too." Leo's response became family legend. "Can I call you Dad, or do you want to stay Mr. Carlos? Because either way is okay. But I think Mama needs someone to help check for monsters sometimes." The wedding took place the following spring in the backyard of the property that had nearly cost them everything. Uncle Joe officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Aunt Martha cried through her carefully applied makeup. Leo served as both ring-bearer and best man, taking his dual roles seriously enough to write his own speech about love and family and the importance of having enough people to catch you when you fall. The reception featured tables made from wood Mia had salvaged during renovations, decorated with wildflowers Leo had picked, and filled with extended family who had learned the difference between supporting and sabotaging the people you claim to love. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that matched the happiness glowing in everyone's faces, Mia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The inheritance had never really been about money or property. It was about recognizing someone who could be trusted with precious things. Her grandmother had seen something in the struggling single mother that she valued more than education or career success or social status. She had seen a woman who would sacrifice everything to protect what mattered most. Claire's letter had ended with a request that Mia didn't know if she would ever grant. "Someday, when enough time has passed, and if you think it would be safe, I would like to meet the man Leo has become. Not to be part of your family again, but to apologize to him directly for using him to hurt you. That someday might come eventually. Healing happens in layers, like paint on old furniture, and some damage takes longer to repair than others. But forgiveness doesn't require trust, and Mia had learned the difference between the two through experience that had cost more than money could measure. Leo grew up strong and confident, never doubting his place in the world because his mother had fought so hard to secure it. He excelled in school, partly due to Carlos's teaching influence, but mostly because children thrive when they feel genuinely wanted and protected. The property became a gathering place for the extended family, hosting birthday parties and holiday celebrations and ordinary Sunday dinners that felt extraordinary because everyone present had chosen to be there. No obligation, no manipulation, just love existing in its purest form. Years later, when Leo was 12 and old enough to understand more complex truths, Mia told him the full story of what had happened when he was 6, how someone in their family had tried to separate them, how she had fought to keep them together, how the whole community had rallied to protect what mattered. "Why did she do it, Mama?" "Sometimes people make wrong choices when they're scared or hurting. That doesn't excuse what they do, but it helps us understand how to protect ourselves from similar situations. Are you still scared sometimes? Every parent is scared sometimes, baby. But fear becomes wisdom when you use it to make better choices." Leo nodded with the gravity of someone far older than his years. "I'm glad you made good choices." "Me too, son. Me too." The security cameras still monitor the property, though they capture mostly mundane moments now. Leo practicing skateboard tricks, Carlos grading papers on the front porch, Mia reading in the garden she created from nothing but vision and determination. Sometimes Claire's car passes slowly on the main road, as if she's checking to see how the story ended without her. Neighbors report seeing her occasionally, usually looking thin and tired but sober. Recovery is a long process, and some battles are fought one day at a time for the rest of someone's life. Mia doesn't know if she'll ever feel ready to face Claire again. The wound's healed, but scars remain as reminders of how quickly trust can shatter and how carefully it must be rebuilt. Leo's safety will always come first, before family loyalty or social expectations or pressure to forgive and forget. But she hopes Claire finds peace somehow. Not for Claire's sake, but because carrying anger is like carrying poison, and Mia has more important things to hold in her heart now. The inheritance transformed from a burden into a blessing exactly as Mia's grandmother had intended. 3 generations of family history sheltered under one roof again, but the occupants were chosen family now, bound by love rather than just blood. On quiet evenings, when Carlos grades papers at the kitchen table and Leo practices violin in the living room and Mia tends her garden in the fading light, she sometimes thinks about the woman who almost destroyed everything they built. There's sadness in the story, but not regret. Every challenge they faced led to stronger bonds. Every threat they survived together proved their love could withstand anything. Claire's greatest mistake was underestimating the power of a mother's love and overestimating the value of everything else. The property still stands as testament to what's possible when people choose to build instead of destroy. The pecan trees shade new generations of children playing games their grandparents invented. The old house shelters dreams that started with nothing but hope and determination. And in the garden, where Mia taught herself to grow beautiful things from small seeds planted in good soil, visitors often comment on how peaceful everything feels. "What's your secret?" they ask, admiring the abundant vegetables and flowering herbs that seem to thrive despite Georgia's unpredictable weather. Mia's answer is always the same. Love them enough to keep them safe, but not so much that you forget they need room to grow. It's advice that applies to more than plants. The hidden camera footage that saved their family remains stored in the safety deposit box, though Mia hopes it will never be needed again. Sometimes protection means having weapons you pray you'll never use. Leo knows the cameras exist, understands why they're necessary, but doesn't let their presence change how he moves through the world. Children adjust to new realities faster than adults, especially when those realities include responsible parents who explain things honestly. "Do you think the cold lady will ever come back?" he asked recently while helping Mia harvest tomatoes. "I don't know, sweetheart. But if she does, we'll handle it together. That's what families do." "Our real family or our chosen family?" "Both, baby. Both." The distinction matters to Leo now that he's old enough to understand that DNA doesn't guarantee devotion. Some relatives love you, others just share your blood. The wise ones learn to tell the difference early and protect themselves accordingly. Carlos brings teaching skills to their parenting that help Leo process complex emotions and develop tools for handling future challenges. Between the 3 of them, they've created something Claire never understood was possible. A family that chooses each other every day, instead of one that takes connection for granted until it shatters. Have you ever lived through or known someone who went through something similar? Have you watched family members use love as a weapon or kindness as a mask for cruelty? The hardest betrayals often come from people who know exactly where to aim their arrows because they've been inside our defenses, sharing our meals, holding our children, learning our vulnerabilities, while planning how to use them against us. But those experiences also teach us who deserves our trust and who has simply inherited access through accident of birth. Blood may be thicker than water, but love is thicker than both, especially when it comes from people who choose to stay instead of people who have to. Mia learned that some inheritances come with strings attached, and sometimes the most valuable thing you can inherit is the courage to cut those strings when they become chains. The grandmother who left her the property didn't just give her money and land. She gave her permission to be selective about family relationships, to prioritize her son's well-being over social expectations, to build something new instead of preserving something that was already broken. Years from now, when Leo grows up and faces his own challenges with relationships and trust and the complexity of human nature, he'll carry lessons learned during this difficult time. How to recognize manipulation, how to document truth when people try to rewrite it, how to stand firm when others try to make you question your own reality. Most importantly, he'll know what genuine love looks like because he grew up surrounded by people who demonstrated it through action, not just words. The property that nearly broke their family ultimately made it stronger. Like bones that heal thicker after breaking, their bonds reformed with additional strength that could weather future storms. Claire's story became a cautionary tale told at family gatherings, not with cruelty, but with sadness for someone who had everything necessary to be happy but chose destruction instead. Her name became synonymous with lessons about jealousy and desperation and the importance of recognizing when someone's help is actually harm in disguise. But mostly, her story serves as backdrop to their triumph. The single mother who refused to let anyone separate her from her child. The community that rallied around genuine need instead of manufactured crisis. The extended family that learned to distinguish between concern and sabotage. The community garden Mia established on their property became more than just a place to grow vegetables. It became a symbol of what's possible when people work together toward common goals instead of competing for limited resources. Families who might never have spoken began sharing tools and knowledge and friendship over rows of tomatoes and green beans. During harvest season, the old Victorian house fills with the laughter of children from a dozen different families, playing the same games Leo once played alone while his mother worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat. The sound echoes through rooms that once held secrets and silence, transforming the space into something magical. The workshop in the converted barn draws women from 3 counties who come to learn furniture restoration while sharing stories of their own struggles and victories. Mia teaches them to see potential in pieces that others might discard, to sand away damage until beautiful wood grain emerges, to apply protective coatings that will help their work withstand whatever weather comes. The metaphors aren't lost on anyone who attends these sessions. Sometimes the most beautiful pieces are the ones that have survived the worst damage, Mia tells her students, as they work on a table someone rescued from a flood. The scars become part of the character if you know how to work with them instead of against them. Carlos develops an after-school program that uses the property as an outdoor classroom, teaching children about sustainable gardening and basic carpentry skills while providing safe spaces for kids whose families struggle with various challenges. Leo serves as a peer mentor, naturally gravitating toward younger children who remind him of himself at that age. The program becomes so successful that the county education system adopts it as a model for other rural communities. Suddenly, the property that Claire once tried to force into sale becomes a destination for educators and social workers from across the state, all wanting to understand how a struggling single mother created something so impactful. But the most meaningful transformation happens during the quiet moments. When Mia sits on the front porch with morning coffee and watches Carlos teach Leo to change the oil in their truck. When she finds love letters from grateful families tucked between tomato plants in the garden. When she realizes that the inheritance wasn't just money and property, but the opportunity to build something that would outlast her own lifetime. The old Victorian house holds 5 generations of memories now, instead of 4. Christmas mornings feature Leo teaching cousins the hiding spots his grandmother once showed him. Summer evenings bring extended family to share meals on tables made from wood salvaged during renovations. Halloween transforms the property into a haunted wonderland that draws trick-or-treaters from neighboring towns. The rhythm of their lives settles into patterns that feel both familiar and miraculous. School pickup and homework help and dinner preparation and bedtime stories. Carlos grading papers while Mia balances community garden budgets. Leo practicing violin while exploring interests that range from astronomy to marine biology to social justice. Normal family life, but precious because they fought for it. The security system still monitors their property, though alerts now mostly involve raccoons investigating compost bins or delivery drivers struggling to find addresses. The cameras have captured thousands of hours of ordinary moments, birthday celebrations and homework sessions and quiet conversations on the front porch swing, evidence of a life well lived instead of threats neutralized. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the pecan trees cast silver shadows across the yard, Mia walks the property boundaries and remembers the night she first brought Leo here. How overwhelmed she felt, how impossible the future seemed, how close they came to losing everything. She touches the bark of trees that witnessed her grandmother's childhood and now shelter her son's growing years. Continuity across generations, roots running deeper than individual struggles. The garden produces more vegetables than their family can consume, so surplus flows to food banks and community kitchens and neighbors experiencing temporary hardship. The abundance feels like justice, considering how many nights Mia once went to bed hungry so Leo could have enough to eat. Leo's 8th grade year brings new challenges as he begins to understand the world beyond their protected community. News stories about family separation and economic inequality affect him deeply because he remembers when those threats felt personal and immediate. Is it unfair that we have so much when other families don't? He asks one evening while helping Mia can tomatoes from their latest harvest. The question reveals wisdom beyond his years and values that weren't taught so much as absorbed through observation and experience. That's exactly why we share what we can, Mia explains, sealing another jar with the satisfying pop that means preservation was successful. Your comfort doesn't require other people's suffering, but it does create responsibility to help when possible. The sustainability workshop she organizes monthly draws participants from across the Southeast, people wanting to learn how one family transformed struggle into abundance through careful planning and community support. The waiting list extends months in advance because word-of-mouth recommendations carry more weight than any advertising could provide. During these sessions, Mia shares practical skills alongside philosophical insights earned through experience that tested every assumption she'd held about family and loyalty and survival. Attendees leave with knowledge about organic gardening and furniture restoration, but also with renewed faith in their own resilience. The old barn conversion becomes a venue for weddings and anniversary celebrations and other milestone events, bringing additional income while maintaining the property's status as a place where families grow stronger. The rental fees support scholarship programs for single mothers pursuing education or training that will improve their employment prospects. Claire's gambling debts, which had motivated her destructive choices, become catalyst for programs that help other families recognize financial crisis before it destroys relationships. Guest speakers during community events include debt counselors and addiction recovery specialists who understand how desperation can twist love into manipulation. The irony isn't lost on anyone who knows their full story. Leo's interest in social justice develops into volunteer work with organizations that support foster children and family reunification programs. His childhood experience of nearly being separated from his mother shapes his dedication to ensuring other children don't face similar threats unnecessarily. At 15, he testifies before the state legislature about reforms needed in child protection protocols, advocating for better training for investigators and more support for families facing economic challenges. His testimony leads to policy changes that affect thousands of families across Georgia. The single mother who almost lost her son becomes the state advocate for family preservation, while her son grows into an adult whose life work centers on protecting vulnerable families from systems that sometimes harm more than they help. Carlos publishes research about educational outcomes for children from single-parent households, using anonymous data from his years teaching Leo and similar students. His findings contribute to national conversations about supporting families instead of judging them, about recognizing strength in various family structures instead of imposing narrow definitions of success. The property that once felt like a burden beyond Mia's capacity becomes the foundation for work that impacts communities across the region. The Victorian House holds offices for 3 nonprofit organizations focused on family support, financial literacy, and sustainable agriculture education. Visitors often comment on the peaceful energy that permeates the property, though few understand its source. Peace comes from alignment between values and actions, from work that serves purposes larger than personal benefit, from daily choices that honor the struggles that brought them to this place. The security cameras capture moments that would seem unremarkable to outsiders, but feel miraculous to family members who remember when safety couldn't be assumed. Leo working on homework while Mia prepares dinner. Carlos feeding chickens they added to their small farm operation. Neighbors stopping by to share garden surplus or ask advice about challenges they're facing. Community in its most essential form. The story spreads beyond their immediate region through articles and interviews and speaking engagements, inspiring similar projects in other rural communities where families struggle with poverty and limited opportunity. The model they developed becomes template for grassroots programs that strengthen communities from within, instead of depending on outside intervention. But the most important audience consists of one teenage boy who learned through direct experience that love requires both tenderness and strength, both vulnerability and fierce protection of what matters most. Leo's college application essays focus on family resilience and community building rather than individual achievement, reflecting values absorbed through years of watching his mother transform challenge into opportunity, while Carlos taught him that teaching itself is a form of love in action. The teenager who once hid behind trees when strangers invaded his home becomes a young man who opens doors for people seeking shelter from their own storms. The property's transformation from nearly lost inheritance to community resource center demonstrates what's possible when people choose cooperation over competition, when they view challenge as opportunity for growth rather than evidence of failure, when they remember that individual success means nothing if the community struggles. Claire's letters arrive annually now, usually around Leo's birthday, updating them on her recovery progress and expressing continued remorse for choices that nearly destroyed the family she claimed to be protecting. The apologies feel genuine, but trust requires consistency over time, and some bridges take decades to rebuild if they can be rebuilt at all. Mia responds with brief notes acknowledging receipt, offering general well wishes, but maintaining boundaries necessary to protect the peace they've constructed from the rubble Claire left behind. Forgiveness doesn't require resumed relationship, and wisdom sometimes means accepting that some chapters must remain closed for everyone's well-being. The community garden produces its most abundant harvest yet during Leo's senior year of high school, as if the earth itself is celebrating the approaching culmination of their long journey from survival to stability to service. Families who started attending workshops as participants now serve as mentors for newer attendees, creating cycles of support that sustain themselves. The scholarship fund, established with rental income from barn events, reaches the point where it can support multiple students annually, creating pathways out of poverty for young people whose families face similar challenges to what Mia once navigated alone. Leo receives scholarship offers from universities across the country, but chooses a state school close enough to allow regular visits home while pursuing degrees in social work and public policy. His admissions interviews reveal someone whose life experiences have created wisdom typically earned through decades rather than 18 years. The departure for college feels different from separations they weathered during the crisis years because this distance serves growth rather than survival, expansion rather than protection. Leo leaves knowing his foundation remains solid, his support system endures. His home waits whenever he needs sanctuary from the challenges of becoming an adult in a complex world. The empty nest phase allows Mia and Carlos to focus energy on expanding programs they've developed, reaching families in neighboring counties who face similar struggles with fewer resources available. The Victorian House becomes even more central to their community as it hosts training programs and support groups and celebration events that strengthen social bonds. The property that once felt too large for a single mother and small boy now barely contains all the life growing within its boundaries. Gardens and workshops and gathering spaces hum with activity from dawn to dusk, as dozens of families participate in programs that began with one woman's determination to protect her child. Sometimes, during quiet moments between events, Mia stands where her grandmother's casket once rested and remembers the funeral that started this entire journey. Death becomes life. Ending becomes beginning. Loss becomes found. The inheritance revealed as gift rather than burden, opportunity rather than obligation. The pecan trees that witnessed 5 generations of family struggles now shade solutions being born from understanding that individual well-being depends on community health, that children thrive when families receive support rather than judgment, that wealth means having enough to share rather than enough to hoard. If this story resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Sometimes the most important stories are the ones that remind us we're not alone in our struggles, and that love really can triumph over manipulation when people refuse to let it be weaponized against them. Remember, trust is earned through consistent action, not inherited through shared genetics. The people who truly deserve places in your life will prove it through behavior that builds you up instead of tearing you down. And if you're currently dealing with someone who uses family connection as permission to harm you, know that choosing your peace over their presence isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. Your story matters, your family's safety matters, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let love be used as a weapon against the people you've sworn to protect. The inheritance Mia received wasn't just money and property. It was permission to redefine family on her own terms, to build community around shared values rather than shared blood, to create abundance through cooperation instead of scarcity through competition. Today, the Victorian House stands as proof that some legacies grow stronger when they're shared rather than hoarded, that some stories end not with resolution, but with transformation, that some families are built not through biology, but through daily choices to love and support and protect what matters most. And in the garden where Mia learned to grow beautiful things from small seeds planted in good soil, new families continue arriving each season, seeking their own paths from struggle to stability, their own transformations from victims to victors, their own discoveries that inheritance isn't what you receive, but what you create for generations yet to come.